There are many places which harbor darkness, otherworldly entities that live in the shadows, watching and stalking until the time is right. This is a story about one of those such places that housed a violent and terrifying entity. Today, here on Mystery Archives, we will be examining the legend of the Bellwitch. In the early 1800s, a man named John Bell moved with his family from North Carolina to Red River, Tennessee. He purchased some land and a large house for his growing family, and over the years acquired more land for a total of 328 acres. During those years, Bell was not only busy with his family and his local community church, but was also hard at work clearing fields to make them viable for planting crops. One day, in 1817, John Bell was inspecting one of his cornfields when he encountered a strange-looking animal sitting in the middle of a corn row. As he walked closer, he stopped dead in his tracks. He had never seen an animal like this one. It had the body of a dog, but the head of a rabbit. He shot several times at the animal, but it seemingly vanished. Although creeped out, John dismissed the event and continued on with his day. He and his family sat down and had dinner, and then shortly after began to get ready for bed. As the family laid down their heads to sleep, they were startled by loud banging sounds on the outside walls of their log house. Gun in hand, John Bell ran outside to discover the source of the noise, only to discover that there was nothing there that he could see. Things were, as a matter of fact, unsettlingly quiet, almost silent, outside of the cabin. Trying to return to his senses, John reassured his family, and they proceeded to return to bed. However, this would be far from the Bells' last restless night. The mysterious sounds returned the next night, just as the Bells were attempting to sleep. John, and now his sons as well, rushed outside to apprehend whoever or whatever was causing the disruption, but again, they were unable to find anything. In the weeks that followed, the Bell children began waking up, frightened. They complained to their parents that rats were gnawing at their bedposts and shaking their beds. Not long after this, the children also complained that their bed covers were being pulled from them and their pillows being thrown across the room by something they couldn't see. As time went on, the Bells began hearing faint, whispering voices, which, too weak to understand, sounded like a feeble old woman singing hymns. The encounters further escalated when the Bells' youngest daughter, Betsy, began experiencing brutal abuse at the hands of an invisible entity. It would pull her hair and slap her relentlessly, often leaving welts and handprints on her face and body. The disturbances, which John Bell told his family to keep a secret, eventually escalated to such a point that he decided to share his family trouble with his closest friend and neighbor, James Johnston. Johnston and his wife spent the night at the Bell home, where they were subjected to the same terrifying activity that the Bells had experienced. After having their bed covers removed and slapped repeatedly, Johnston sprang out of his bed and screamed, "In the name of the Lord, who are you and what do you want?" There was no response. What started as a whisper strengthened over time to the point to where it was loud and unmistakable. The voice sang hymns, quoted scripture, and even carried on intelligent conversations. This included even once quoting word for word 2 sermons that were preached at the same time, on the same day. News of the supernatural happenings soon spread outside of the settlement, even to Nashville, where then Major General Andrew Jackson took a keen interest. John Bell and his older sons had fought under General Jackson in the Battle of New Orleans. In 1819, Jackson decided to visit the Bell farm to see what was really going on for himself. As he approached the Bell farm with a party of several men, well-groomed horses, and a wagon, the wagon suddenly stopped, and the horses couldn't pull it. After several minutes of cursing and trying to coax the horses into pulling the wagon, Jackson proclaimed, "By the eternal, boys, that must be the bellwitch." This remark was preceded by a disembodied female voice that told Jackson that he could proceed and that she would see him again later that evening. The wagon then was able to be moved again, and Jackson and his party made their way to the Bell home, where Jackson proceeded to have a long discussion about a wide range of topics, including the paranormal activity. One of the men in Jackson's party was a supposed witch tamer. He proclaimed this while brandishing a small shiny pistol filled with one silver bullet, and said that nothing was happening because of the entity's fear of him. Only seconds after this statement left the man's mouth, he began to jerk violently, his body shifting in different directions. He was then thrown out the front door as everyone in the house heard a loud female voice curse the man as a fraud. Now terrified, Jackson's men begged to leave the Bell farm, but Jackson, on the other hand, insisted on staying so that he could ascertain if the phenomena was real or not. The men, including Jackson, spent the night, and what happened isn't clear, but the crew left very early the following morning and headed back to Nashville. And although it wasn't officially documented, Jackson would later write that he would rather fight the British in New Orleans than to have to fight the bellwitch. The paranormal activity continued to plague the family for years to come. It notably caused Betsy Bell, the Bell's eldest daughter, to call off her engagement amongst other notable interactions. And on December 20th, 1820, John Bell had slipped into a coma and took his last breath. The following day, the family found a small vial of unidentified liquid in the cupboard. John Bell Jr. gave some to one of the family's cats, which died within a matter of seconds. The entity then spoke up and said, "I gave old Jack a big dose of that last night, and it fixed him up." John Bell Jr. then threw the vial into the fireplace, where it burst into a bright bluish flame. John Bell was then formally laid to rest just days later. That wasn't the end of the visitations, however. In April of 1821, the entity visited John Bell's widow, Lucy, and told her that it would return every 7 years. And 7 years to the day, it did return for the first time and visited with John Bell Jr. The creature discussed a wide range of topics, from the origin of life, civilization, and more. It was even said to predict things like the Civil War and both world wars, among others. This would be the last time the entity was heard from, after it promised to visit the most direct descendant of John Bell in 107 years. The year was 1935, and the closest living relative was Dr. Charles Bailey Bell. Charles did write a book about the bellwitch, but never recorded any such visitation, and never would. The entity that plagued the Bell family and the Red River settlement over 200 years ago is often blamed for strange and unexplainable manifestations that occur near the old Bell farm today. The faint sounds of people talking, children playing, and even an old woman whispering have been reported, alongside seeing ghostly figures and lit candles in an empty field where the settlement once was. The cave located near the property is said to have originally housed the witch that plagued the Bells. Visions of a ghostly woman have been seen over the years since John Bell's demise. Since no one who witnessed the apparition of the Bell Witch is alive today, we can't ever know for sure what happened on that large stretch of land, but the pages of history still whisper the frightening tale, and the legend lives on. So what do you think? Was the Bell Witch real? Did multiple handwritten accounts, including future President Andrew Jackson's, solidify that something indeed was happening there? Make sure to let me know down in the comments below. Subscribe with the bell if you are new here, and don't forget to leave a like and share this video around on social media. So until next time, this has been Cody here at Mystery Archives. Thank you so much for watching, and have yourself a wonderful day.